So this week we had some pretty big news. Top prospect Jackson Cantwell commits to University of Miami, and this was a big deal. Number one overall recruit in the country. Was that for the 26 class?
26 class. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's kind of a weird recruiting situation with how this all went down. It's very reminiscent of Justice Terry, who was the lineman that went to Ole Miss that one time. That was Georgia. Laramie Tunsil. Yeah, it reminds me of that because Cantwell went on six visits with Georgia, which is crazy. Posting all this stuff about him and Jared Curtis, and today he commits to Miami, which is fine. But his reasoning when he got pressed on the NIL piece of it was a little puzzling.
It was. So this is a kid that for the last few weeks, Georgia was considered the favorite. Miami was the first school that ever offered him, I think, back years ago. But his recruitment really kicked up when he got a Georgia offer, and then he kind of blew up. But Georgia was seen as the favorite. He had a commitment date set. He backed it up, added visits to Georgia and Oregon. And it really seemed like Georgia was the favorite. Most of the national media thought he was headed to Georgia, especially after Jared Curtis committed last week. There was a picture of him and Jared Curtis that Jared Curtis's mom posted yesterday. It just seemed like it was going to happen. But then in about the last day or so, there began to be rumblings that Miami was coming back in really hot with NIL deals. So this was a recruitment that everybody knew was going to be a high NIL deal. Number one player in the country, number one offensive tackle. Georgia and Oregon, the other two teams that were really in this, made good offers from what I understand, but it sounded like he was asking a lot more. Rumors were that he was asking 4 times more than what Georgia had ever paid a player coming out of high school. Now, I don't think anybody was going to pay that.
Miss all the shots you don't take.
Right. But I think what happened is that here in the last day or so, Miami decided they were willing to go to that number. Rumors are that he's getting $5 million guaranteed. I mean, I don't know if that's true or what, but that's an insane amount of money for a left tackle, A, and B, for a kid who's never set foot on a campus, right? He's 16 years old. It's just insane. Kind of the weird thing was that the reporter from, I think it was from Dog Nation, asked him, hey, what was the deal with the NIL deal? And all he had to say was, yeah, it was a competitive deal and I took the deal that was best for my family. But instead, he kind of got all mad and kind of came out and called out Peter Nakos, who, if you remember, Peter Nakos was the guy a couple weeks ago who called out the Nico situation, and Nico's dad tried to rip him in the media.
And he ended up being right.
Right. So, but it just seemed weird. Like, this is the day and age of NIL. You can say I took the money. Or if you don't want to say that, at least just say I took what was best for my family and this is what we thought. But he came out and said that he was worried about development and all that. And yes, Miami has a good offensive line coach, but Georgia has consistently put offensive linemen in the NFL. I think we've had 6 straight years where we've put at least 2 offensive linemen in the NFL every year.
Yeah.
Georgia's been consistent. So if you're talking about development, comparing Georgia to Miami wouldn't be the place that you would go necessarily.
Yeah, I just think it's such a disingenuous answer, and those types of answers are actually really annoying and off-putting because, like you said, you got paid more. Just own it. Say, I tweeted that like after I saw the report. I was like, it'd be so much better for him to just say, yeah, I took the money. It was better for my family, better situation for me. They have a good offensive line coach. I can still get developed there. Right. It's a win-win for him. No problem with the decision, but the reaction of saying, oh, it's all about development, and that's bull. It's just BS.
Right. Yeah, nobody's going to fault a kid for taking $5 million as a 16-year-old to go live in Miami.
I know. I tweeted out, as like, Miami's recruiting like they're in the 80s.
Yeah, I mean, It's crazy. But this is the world we're in, right?
Yeah, I
And the
mean,
thing is, Miami's now committed this money, right? In a couple years, this kid may be back in the portal.
he
And
might be.
he might never play there. Like, it all depends. So it's a risk. This is this high risk, high reward game that teams are playing right now. And I think schools like Georgia and Oregon and Alabama, they're willing to spend money, but I think they also have a point. They have a limit to what they're going to go to. Georgia has proven that in the past, and I think they're stretching it at least this year, it seems like. I mean, I think, the NIL deal for Curtis was rumored to be, what was it, like $4 million over 2 years? So,
Right. I think they're stretching for certain positions
right.
because listening to Brandon Adams last week talking about how Georgia has, pretty consistently recruited well at like the least coveted positions in the NFL draft, like center. Georgia's is known for centers now and interior linebackers and stuff like that. Georgia does a really good job of getting the top talent at those positions and then coming in with, the really big deal recruits to kind of as cherries on top of it. So they're going to Georgia's continue to do that. And, Kirby is really high on players that love football, want to work, want to be developed. And I'm not saying Cantwell doesn't want all of that either.
Right. I want anybody who watches this to know we're not faulting Cantwell at
No,
all.
we're
He
super
made a
happy
fine
for him.
decision. We're not like complaining. Like, this isn't sour grapes. This is just, it's weird that he came out so defensive afterwards. The kid did what was best for him, and 99.9% of us probably would have done the same thing. So we're not judging the kid. We just thought that the response was weird.
Yeah, just own it. It's your decision. Own it. Yeah, you made it.
Right.
Cool. Good for you, man. If it was NIL money coming in at the end that, pushed the pendulum that way, cool.
Yep.
Good for you, man.
That's the name of the game. But you know what? It wasn't all bad news in recruiting for Georgia this week at all. Earlier this week, they got a commitment from Jordan Smith, safety, 4-star player, number 6 safety in the country, top 100 player overall. That gives Georgia 2 top 100 players at safety in this class. And obviously, they've got big targets still on the board after the Jackson Cantwell miss. The big one is Tyler Atkinson, linebacker from Grayson. To me, he's the number one target for Georgia. He's the can't miss guy. Like, almost more important than getting Jared Curtis in this class is getting Tyler Atkinson from Metro Atlanta. If you've seen any of his film, reminds you a lot of these awesome linebackers that Georgia's had. Quick, makes big plays. He's a must get to continue to develop the defense. Georgia has done very well on the lines. So he's a good one. Georgia's looking like they're going to be the favorites for Mark Bowman, the number 1 tight end in the country. A guy who looks very similar to Brock Bowers and how he plays. They're also apparently favorite for another tight end, Jaden Prothero, who is another top 5 tight end in the country. I don't know where we're going to keep putting these tight ends, but they love to come to Georgia. So we'll keep stacking them up.
We're just going to go 5 wide with all tight ends.
We used to joke about the package a couple years ago when we had Bowers and Washington and Delp, right?
They should run the oop de oop with all tight ends.
There's lots of other big targets still out there for Georgia. Georgia is considered to be one of the favorites for Saban Hyder, number 1 running back, 5-star. It's looking to be a Georgia-Ohio State competition there. There's a couple wide receivers they're in on. So
I'd imagine Hyder. I got to think Ohio State's got to be the front runner there.
Yeah, I mean, I think right now, at least on the predictions, and predictions don't mean anything, obviously, anymore. But right now, I think it's Georgia, Ohio State are neck and neck, but we'll see where that goes. I don't think he's not from Georgia, and I don't think he's from Ohio. So no in-state advantage on that one. But
Atkinson, that's, like you said, must get. I think they wanted to get Atkinson more than Cantwell.
I would think so. They got Juan Gaston in this last class, right, to come in at left tackle. So they got a big very high valued left tackle commit. But I think getting a 5-star player at middle linebacker is important because look, Georgia had Roquan Smith. What did they do? They played for the national championship. Georgia had Nakobe Dean. What did they do? Won a national championship. They had Smile Mundon and they had Jamon Dumas Johnson, who the top end were not as good as the guys before, but were solid players that helped
Super
anchor
solid.
that defense. They won another national championship. So that position in Georgia's defense is so important that
it's the quarterback of the defense.
Right. And I mean, you look back to 2021, Nakobe Dean in that national championship game, Channing Tindall gets out of position on that play. Nakobe tears him a new one. Next play, what happens? Channing Tindall makes a sack. Alabama only gets a field goal instead of a touchdown. Huge play. So I think that's a very important position in Kirby's defense, and that's why I think he's getting that attention.
Well, fingers crossed. Hope the stars align. We get the right, combination of program, culture, and NIL. I mean, that's really what it comes down to nowadays.
It does. Yeah. And it will be interesting to see what happens. Obviously, we're still waiting on this settlement details. There was an interesting report today kind of related to NIL, though. The ACC, I guess, had some meetings going on, and they met with Deloitte officials today. And Ross Dillinger reported that 70% of past deals that were done with booster collectives would not have been approved under the current structure that the Deloitte is looking to use. 70%. And when you consider that most of these NIL deals that are paying kids right now are with collectives, that's bad. But on the flip side, it said 90% of deals that were done with public companies, where the companies have to report their information, would have been approved. So for what NIL is supposed to be under this revenue sharing thing, that NIL deals are really supposed to be truly, market share, that's a good sign that 90% would be approved. It's just figuring out how to transfer that money from those shady deals that wouldn't have been approved into real deals.
I want to know what the criteria is. I really, really want to know what that is. Because that's interesting. It's an interesting stat to say 70% of past deals would not have been approved.
Right.
But why?
Yeah. I don't know. Like I said, I just saw that report this afternoon, so I thought it was an interesting number.
Why ask why? Yeah, that is an interesting number. I hope they nail down that stuff pretty soon and get it all worked out.
Yeah, I think the sticking points are the roster size limit and then whatever the definition of fair market value is. I think those are the two holdups.
Yeah, I can see that.
But as we are a society that is obsessed with numbers and everybody has a list, as we have reached the end of spring and we're getting close to summer, schools ended at most universities. In the last week or so, you've started seeing popping up post-spring rankings all over the place. You've got some of your typical hitters up there at the top. Your Texas is up there in a lot of them. Penn State's very high. Ohio State, Oregon. Georgia has not been as high as they have been in the past. CBS had them at 5. Schlabach had them at 4. 24/7 at 6. Andy Staples had us at 8. And Joel Klatt had us at 8. But lower than anybody else was Josh Pate. Josh Pate had Georgia at 11. And he had some reasonings for it. And typically Josh doesn't do rankings. He does what he calls power ratings. And his power ratings are a little bit different. They're based on if you looked at teams playing each other, who would be favored and all that. But he said he did
the still rankings.
Yeah. But it's not, it doesn't take so much into won losses in account and more, how good the teams are. But he discounted Georgia. He said he's got Georgia down at 11, and that's fine. If you question Georgia's offensive line, you question the fact that they didn't run the ball very well last year, that's fine.
New quarterback.
But then I started looking at his other rankings. I'm not sure if I understand all of his reasoning. So, this year's Georgia team coming into 2025 is going to have the highest blue chip talent percentage of any team in Georgia history. The schedule gets considerably easier than last year when we had those 3 tough road games in the SEC plus Clemson to open the season. All those games are flipped and are home games this year. And then a lot of those other teams that are the tough games that are on our schedule and stuff, well, those teams that some of them are ranked higher than us. So he had Alabama ranked higher than us. He had Texas ranked higher than us. He had Oklahoma ranked higher than us. He had Florida ranked higher than us.
Yeah,
Ohio State.
Those last two, Florida and Oklahoma being ranked ahead, that's where it makes me scratch my head.
Yeah.
Because I can see, and Clemson at number 1. What the heck?
So what I was going to say is that him talking about a lot of those schools have new starting quarterbacks, which is one of the knocks he had against Georgia. But Bama is starting a new quarterback. Tennessee is now going to be starting a new quarterback, which he didn't have Tennessee.
Texas.
Georgia, but Texas is starting a new quarterback. Ole Miss is starting a new quarterback.
Notre Dame.
Even if you look at the other ones, Notre Dame is starting a new quarterback. Oregon's starting a new quarterback. Ohio State's starting a new quarterback. Oklahoma's starting a new quarterback. So all of those schools are starting new quarterbacks, and that was one of the reasons that he talked about. So I don't know. You can doubt Georgia. That's fine. But Georgia hasn't finished outside of the top 10 since 2016. Georgia has played in every SEC championship game except for the COVID year since 2017. They've won 2 national championships. They've won 3 SEC championships in that time. So you're going to tell me that a team that last year struggled to run the ball, was in the 100s in the country running the ball, had a tougher schedule, and still won the SEC is going to be worse next year?
And has arguably the best coaching staff in college football.
I just don't know if I buy it. I don't know if Georgia's going to win the national championship next year. I didn't know if they were going to be a contender this year. You know what? As bad as Georgia was, they won the SEC. You know what they were ranked going into the playoffs? They were number 2.
Mm-hmm. And in any other system, they would have been playing for the national title.
Right.
But that's not the system anymore. So they didn't make it, and is what it is. But I secretly think that Pate's just trying to give some motivation to Kirby.
Maybe he is.
Because he's from Georgia. He was talking about that the other day.
Yeah. He's from Columbus, which we all know is Auburn town. I don't know where his alliance is. He always plays it kind of coy. Some people say that he's Alabama fan secretly at heart. I don't think he's really anything. I think he's just a college football fan. It's just weird. I think it's more of a talking point. Does he really feel that way? I don't know.
Well, it certainly got some buzz. I mean, so grant him that.
Right.
I just can't believe Florida is ahead. But
people are putting a lot of faith in DJ Lagway's shoulder right now. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah, you brought that up weeks ago about his injury history.
Right. Well, it's more so the shoulder injury. He couldn't play in spring. You're relying on a guy who was about same number of touchdown passes to interceptions last year, who couldn't throw in spring and get better. So physically, yeah, he's an amazing talent, but we'll see. Just like last year, they have one of the hardest schedules in the country. So.
And you're only good if you can actually stay on the field. Okay. So some other controversy sort of going on right now. Bill Belichick is making waves. He had a super awkward interview the other day, and his girlfriend, his 24-year-old girlfriend?
Way too young.
Bless him. Apparently, like, she made it super awkward, not wanting to talk about certain things. And the big news that's happened, that everybody knew was going to happen, is that Bill Belichick's contract is approaching the date where his buyout goes from 10 million to 1 million. And so this begs the question, and will he even coach a game at North Carolina? And I'm on record as soon as the whole contract got published saying I don't think he's going to coach a single game at North Carolina.
I think he makes it to the season, but if his situation with the girlfriend and being banned from the football facility and then releasing a statement saying she wasn't banned, and I don't know if that's the kind of news that a program that is trying to push its football team more wants to have, especially not with a coach who is older in age and is trying to build a program. I think winning will heal all. So if he comes out and he's there at the start of the season and they start winning, I think people, at least around the program, will forget about this. But if he comes out and starts losing and there's distractions, maybe he makes it a year. But like you said, maybe he doesn't make it to the first game.
Yeah. I think there's more of a chance that he does stick it out for the year because he did bring in Lombardi to be his GM. And I don't know, that to me signals that there's some buy-in, some skin in the game a little bit there, taking it seriously. But he's really working hard at trying to get people to forget that he was the greatest NFL coach of all time.
Right. You wouldn't think that having Bill Belichick as your head coach and the biggest story is about his 24-year-old girlfriend every day.
Patriot way.
No, it's mind-blowing to me.
It really is. It's so un-Belichick.
Right. Well, speaking of a different coach, one who is respected and did not make weird decisions like that, Nick Saban is back in the news. Donald Trump announced that he's going to be forming a commission to take a look at college athletics, and I think football in particular, and he's asked Nick Saban to be the co-chair of the commission on college athletics. He's going to be working with the other co-chair, which is Cody Campbell, who is the head of the Texas Tech NIL, is a big-time money guy in the state of Texas. They're being asked to examine issues facing college sports, including the transfer portal, compensation, Title IX issues, treatment of players. So it's very interesting to me that this sounds like Nick Saban is getting closer and closer to just being the commissioner of college football.
Yeah, I wonder how this is going to dovetail with the existing talks and things that they're already trying to get implemented with the settlement.
Yeah, I mean, I think
factors into it.
I think maybe once all that comes through, if it's legal through the Supreme Court, and then you've got a branch of the government looking into it, maybe that's the kind of, when there's issues and disputes, maybe that's where it goes. It goes up to Nick Saban's group to take a look at disputes or how to make things better, or, just little changes, So I think it's good. I think Nick Saban is the right person. Despite now being a year and a half removed from coaching, he's arguably still the most powerful coach in America.
Yeah, and he will be remembered as the greatest college football coach of all time.
Right. And so his words still hold a lot of weight. He's still very visible. He's not one of these coaches who coached for a long time and then disappeared like Bobby Bowden. He's obviously on College Game Day. You see him every weekend. So he's still out there and he still seems to be up with the conversation. So I hope it works out. It's interesting that the president is the one making this announcement and forming this group, but put your politics aside. If you care about college sports and you care about the sport of college football, I think this is a good thing in the long run.
I do too. It just shows how messed up college football is when the government has to get involved in regulating how the league is ran. That's the world we're in today.
Yep.
But it would be cool to see some more stuff happening. So I guess the 16-team playoff is gaining steam.
Yeah, we all knew that this next year is the last year of the current structure. Now, what does that mean long term? We didn't know, but it sounds like in recent days that the SEC and Big Ten are in favor of this next model, which would be either a 14 team or a 16 team playoff. And why wouldn't they be? If you've looked at the details of this, you would have to absolutely be crazy to think that they wouldn't be in favor of it under this new plan. So whether it's 14 teams or 16 teams, the SEC and the Big Ten each get 4 automatic qualifiers. The ACC and the Big 12 get 2 automatic qualifiers, and then 1 for the G6. And depending on if it's a 14 or 16 team, the rest are considered at-large / Notre Dame. And Notre Dame was figured directly in there. Under the 16-team playoff schedule, there would be no buys. Everybody would play. It would really, really diminish the strength of the selection committee. 1 to 16 would just basically be done on the top 25 rankings.
Which I think the weakening of that committee is a good thing. Yeah. I mean, even the rankings mean a lot less with this type of format, because I think one of the things about how the SEC and Big Ten teams would make it like either like your top 4 teams just get automatic bids, or there's some kind of play in. I get in those spots.
I think the discussion was that the top 2 teams would be in the conference championship game, right? But they would already be in the playoffs. And then you would have that same weekend as the conference championship, you would have essentially 4 teams playing for 2 spots in play-in games, essentially. Which would be interesting, because that would make that the championship weekend would go from 2 teams in the SEC or 2 teams in the Big Ten to 6.
Why would you even bother with a championship game other than money?
Money. That's why.
Because if you're one of those teams, why play the extra game?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if that's even been discussed. That's just
logically that just doesn't make sense. I think it's awesome to have 2 play-in games that weekend instead.
Yeah. Yes. The only thing is, yes, you're going to lose out on money. The SEC championship means a lot. So
yeah, but you're also replacing it with 2 play-in games.
Right.
And you can play them neutral sites too if you really want to.
You absolutely could.
But I mean, good Lord, they're really trying to stress out the fans and make it really hard to go to all these games.
It's not going to be easy, because once you get to 16 teams, right? You're at 4 rounds of playoffs for everybody. And then if you've got a play-in game, which before you get a conference championship game, that's a 5th postseason game. So on top of 12-game regular season schedule, you're looking at 17 games to win a national championship.
Hopefully they would do the majority of the games on campus.
Yeah.
And you would your think Final Four would be your bowl game, like your traditional BCS bowl games.
Yeah, you would figure they would keep it the model they did this year. So, but instead of just being that 1 round on campus, it would be 2 rounds on campus.
Yeah. I mean, even this year with the way they have it, until they get to the Final Four, those bowl games, like Georgia playing Notre Dame in the Sugar Bowl, no. Don't try to tell me that's the Sugar Bowl. It didn't mean anything in terms of the Sugar Bowl. It was a playoff game at a neutral site. Like, that's it. Would have been much cooler to be played on campus, which we've seen,
We haven't seen it though. Not yet. I've never seen a playoff game yet. So always time for something new.
I was just talking about Georgia Notre Dame on campus.
Yeah, we have seen that.
But yeah, I mean, that would really be cool if they were able to just have all the rounds until the Final Four be on campus. I think that would be freaking awesome. The atmospheres would be great. It makes it more similar to the NFL. Obviously they play home and home or on their home fields until they get to the Super Bowl. So that would be one difference, but still good.
Yeah, it would be cold. A lot of games outside. Obviously, more teams, more parts of the country. We saw how cold it was at the Ohio State game and the Ohio State Tennessee game. But it would be interesting. So we'll see. Something's going to happen in 2026. We know that the deal's up this year. So what's coming, we'll see. I expect that they will announce it sometimes this fall. It will be a whole television show, and they will have lots of talking heads, and it'll give us tons of things to talk about. How this year's playoff sucks, and next year's going to be so much better, and Mickey Mouse will be happy.
Okay, well, I think that's all we got today.
Yep. So until next time, I'm Street.
I'm Burl.
Go Dogs.
Go Dogs. Whoop whoop.